What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the video. In today's video, we are going to be recapping the first day of the second round of the 2026 March Madness bracket. There was a lot of good games today. There was 8 college basketball games today. We have 8 today, 8 tomorrow. I will be live for some games tomorrow. I did not go live for games today because I went out of town to hang out with my friends. As it was someone's birthday, so I wasn't really able to kind of stream a lot of games, but I will be here tomorrow to stream at least 3, maybe 4 college basketball games. But I do want to sit here and kind of make a little video recapping all of the games on the first day of the second round, and I do apologize if my voice is cooked. Whole lot of screaming today. I'm also going to do a preview of the games tomorrow, along with some of the teams that have already punched their ticket into the next round, which is the Sweet 16, the good old Sweet 16. So starting things off, we had Michigan, the number 1 team. They're sitting at 33-3. Michigan destroying St. Louis, right? St. Louis obviously having that beautiful win over Georgia a couple days ago in a 9v8 matchup, right? Now, people say that was an upset, but St. Louis, I think they were still like 1.5, 2.5 point favorites. It was basically a pick 'em game, but St. Louis were the theoretical favorites, be able to win that game. But Michigan, obviously, we know as the 1 seed. I mean, they're going to at least make the Elite Eight, maybe the Final Four, now that Iowa State is currently undergoing some injuries on that side of the bracket in the Midwest region. So Michigan's actually probably one of the favorites to make it to the Final Four out of that side of the bracket. But Michigan, right, they had a nice 9-point lead at halftime. And, they outscored St. Louis 47-33 in that second half, and they win 95-72. So it was an easy win for Michigan. They showed up. They get the job done. They move on to the Sweet 16 with some pretty easy games. Then we had Duke beat TCU. This was a dominating win for Duke. We know they struggled against Siena there on Thursday, but they show up and they beat TCU 81-58. It was a pretty competitive first half. Duke, again, starting off the game very, very slow. We know Duke can start the game off hot, but so far in their first 2 games, they're not looking like the Duke Blue Devils team that we're used to seeing. But in the second half, they stepped up. They shut up almost double the amount of points that TCU scored, and Duke won 81-58 there. So they're moving on to the Sweet 16 as Boozer had 19 points, 11 rebounds, a double-double with 3 steals to complement that. Then we had this game. The Houston Cougars beat Texas A&M. I am an A&M fan, but I did choose Houston to win this. With this, I'm 3 for 3 on my predictions so far on today's games. Houston won 88-57. I mean, this game was basically over. A&M just doesn't really have the talent like Houston does. Houston has a lot more talent, a lot more guard play. They're just more of a dominant team, right? We know what they did last year. They complement that really, really well. Houston's a really good 2 seed. A&M's a pretty decent 10 seed, but a 2 and a 10 seed is a very big difference. Houston, I mean, the game was already over within like halfway through the first half. I checked in this game while I was, out of town, and man, this game was pretty ugly. Kind of just sit there and look at the scoreboard because I was like, see my Aggies just get demolished like that. I mean, at least we won a game, but it's just I feel like every year we always win the first game and then we always get shut out in the second game, and it's just like a reoccurring theme every single season. But at least we made it to the second round. We kind of kept it competitive for a couple of minutes, but that's really it. Houston moves on. Then we had this game. Michigan State beat Louisville. Like I said, my prediction, I knew Michigan State was going to make the Sweet 16 because it's just Tom Izzo, the culture that he has with Michigan State. Michigan State wins 77-69. They had a 5-point lead at the end of the first half. Then they outscore Louisville in the second half, and they win by 8 points in Buffalo, New York at the KeyBank Center. This is a good matchup. It's a 6v3, 2 pretty highly ranked seeded teams, 2 teams who have a big identity in the March Madness bracket, 2 teams who typically do pretty well, have had some Sweet 16 appearances, but obviously Michigan State with Tom Izzo and kind of that culture that he's built over there with Michigan State with Carr, 21 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double as the main guy for Michigan State. They ended up winning, and they're moving on to the Sweet 16. Now, I do think they'll struggle in the Sweet 16 because that's typically where Michigan State does struggle at, but at least they made it to the Sweet 16, so that bracket's good. So far, I'm perfect on today's games. Now, one of the games I did get wrong was this one. Texas beating Gonzaga. I did not expect this at all. Did not expect this. Gonzaga as the 3 seed. Now, I know Gonzaga is not a strong 3 seed. I know this is not the best Gonzaga team we have seen over the past decade, but I definitely did expect them to win this game by at least a handful of points. No, they did not. Now, it was a competitive first half. I knew this game was going to be pretty competitive. I knew what Texas did in the first round against BYU was going to transfer into this game, but I just know Gonzaga was better than BYU, so I thought Gonzaga was just going to end up winning this game by a handful of points. Competitive first half, a really competitive second. I mean, the game literally came down to the final couple minutes, but Texas really stepped up in the last 2-3 minutes of that ball game. Voki Titus putting up 17 points, 9 rebounds. He had phenomenal first 2 games for Texas. They move on to the Sweet 16. I mean, a first 4 team making it to the Sweet 16, beating BYU, then beating Gonzaga. They do have to take on the winner of the Miami and Purdue game, so we'll see what happens there. I mean, if Purdue wins, I think Purdue will end up winning that game. Now, if Miami wins, I think Texas has a pretty good shot at making the Elite Eight. I mean, Texas, they could be a potential dark horse sleeper team this year because they are playing fierce. They're playing like everything's on the line for them. Like, I mean, they're showing up. They're playing well, really good complementary basketball, and you saw that today as they beat the number 3 team, Gonzaga. Then we had number 3 Illinois beating VCU. We saw VCU obviously beat at North Carolina in the first round, but I mean, it's a number 3 Illinois. Illinois is probably the strongest 3 seed. Illinois, they show up, they dominate, right? They were up by 7 at the end of the first half. They brought that energy there in that second half, and Illinois, they're just a very good team, very good dominant team with a lot of good talented players, good coaching. I mean, Illinois is a very, very complete team, one of the strongest 3 seeds. They win pretty comfortably over VCU. They won by 21 points. Then we had Nebraska beating Vanderbilt. I did choose Vanderbilt to win this game because I thought they were a good enough team, right? You make the SEC tournament finals, but no, Nebraska, they step up. Not only did they win their first game in program history in the first round, but now they win their second here in the second round, and they move on to the Sweet 16. They win by 2 points. They had a pretty dominant first half, really kind of stumbled in that second half, but they still end up winning 74-72 in a nail-biter. Congratulations to the Cornhuskers for beating the Commodores in that 5v4 matchup. And then we had Arkansas beating High Point. High Point doing pretty good. Really competitive game against Arkansas. High Point as a 12 seed almost made the Sweet 16, but Arkansas, way more experienced team. A lot more talent, and they end up winning by 6 points like Arkansas was supposed to do as the 4 seed. So, pretty good games today here on today's slate. Now, if you take a look at the games tomorrow, which I will be live for a couple of games. Miami and Purdue will be the 11:10 a.m. game Central Time on CBS. As Purdue sitting at 7.5-point favorites. I do have the Boilermakers winning that game. I will be live for that game. Next up, we have Kentucky, Iowa State. Iowa State sitting at 4.5-point favorites. I did pick Iowa State to win this game, but because of the injury, Kentucky actually has a pretty good shot of winning that game. St. John's in Kansas. St. John's staying at 3.5-point favorites in that 5v4 matchup. I mean, 2 7v2 matchups, then a 5v4 matchup at 4:15. A lot of decent games here. Tennessee and Virginia, 6v3 game. Tennessee 1.5-point favorites. That game's at 5:10. Iowa and Florida. Florida sitting at 10.5-point favorites there as the 1 seed. Utah State, Arizona. Arizona sitting at 11.5-point favorites there. A 6:50 game. UCLA, UConn. UConn sitting at 4.5-point favorites in that 7v2 matchup. And then Texas Tech, Alabama. Texas Tech sitting at 1.5-point favorites. Pick'em game at the 8:45 time slots there in Tampa, Florida. So those are all the games there for tomorrow. Now, we can go over here to NCAA basketball because if I go over here, it will already kind of put some of the matchups here for the Sweet 16. So the Sweet 16 will start Thursday, March 26th. So we will have a couple of days off until we transfer into the Sweet 16 games. We have Illinois and Houston. They're already labeled for that 3v2 matchup. So that's going to be pretty interesting. We can actually take a look at the official March Madness bracket. So if you take a look here, go over here to the March Madness bracket. So you can see we have Arkansas. They're going to be taking on the winner of Arizona, Utah State. Texas is going to be taking the winner of Miami, Florida, Purdue. Duke's going to be taking on the winner of St. John's, Kansas. Michigan's going to be taking on the winner of UCLA, UConn. Nebraska going to be taking on the winner of Florida, Iowa. Illinois going to be Illinois, Houston already going head-to-head. Michigan is taking on the winner of Tech and Alabama. Tennessee, Virginia going to be taking on the winner of Kentucky and Iowa State there. So that's kind of what the bracket has already shown. Only one matchup has officially been finalized, and that's Illinois-Houston, that 3v2 over in the South. While Michigan has already moved on there, Texas, Arkansas, and Duke, Michigan State have already moved on. So that's what the bracket is looking like right now as we head into day 2 of the second round tomorrow morning. Let's see how well we do.